The footage begins with a stillness that feels deceptive, the kind of quiet that usually precedes the inevitable shock of violence in a region where tension has never truly disappeared. In the southern Lebanese village of Majadal, morning light falls over a cluster of worn buildings, olive trees, and narrow streets, an ordinary scene in a place where war has left deep scars, but where daily life still insists on returning, no matter how fragile. In the background, residents know that the Israeli military has issued a warning a building in the area will be struck. They have heard the statements before, seen leaflets dropped from the sky, listened to radio notices that blend military intention with an unsettling sense of routine. Yet knowing does not soften the blast that is about to rip through the moment. Then, without transition, the still frame erupts. A bright detonation slams into a building in the center of the village. The explosion expands in a violent bloom, dust, concrete, and fire bursting outward as the structure absorbs the full force of an Israeli airstrike. The camera captures the hit with jarring clarity, the kind that leaves no ambiguity about the power being projected across the border. The building, a modest multi-story structure, seems to fold inward as debris shoots skyward. For a long second, the frame is consumed by the shockwave before the smoke begins to gather, rising in thick plumes that curl into the pale sky. It is a moment that defines this frontier, unmistakably violent, delivered with precision, and framed within the uneasy quiet that follows. The strike is part of a pattern, one of several carried out in southern Lebanon in recent days. It comes despite a ceasefire that has technically been in place for a year, a ceasefire negotiated after a deadly conflict between Israel and Hezbollah, but one that has repeatedly shown its fragility on the ground. As the smoke begins to lift, the camera widens its perspective, revealing the landscape around the structure. Dark columns spiral upward, bending with the wind, drifting over rooftops, fields, and power lines. Villagers remain out of frame, but one can imagine them watching from behind shuttered doors, from the edges of narrow streets, or from the safety of homes that may or may not be safe at all. In the distance, the echoes of the strike fade, replaced by the rumble of dust settling and the faint hum of engines approaching. The Israeli military had announced beforehand that it would target a building in the area. In recent months, officials in Tel Aviv have repeatedly insisted that these strikes are directed at infrastructure associated with Hezbollah or other militant groups. Lebanon, however, describes them as violations of its sovereignty, deliberate escalations, and reminders that Israel maintains a strategic presence in southern Lebanon even after the ceasefire lines were established. The contrast between the diplomatic language and the footage unfolding here is stark. Announcements are measured, but airstrikes are not. In these moments after the explosion, the village holds its breath. The smoke thickens, grey and black layers mixing as they rise. The camera shifts between medium and wide frames, following the billowing aftermath as it spreads across the sky. The building is now obscured behind the dense cloud, its outline barely distinguishable. The devastation inside is unknown, whether anyone remained in the vicinity, whether secondary explosions will follow, whether the structure will continue to burn. The footage offers no immediate answers. It shows only the expanding plume, a visual symbol of a conflict that refuses to settle into the past. What makes the timing of this strike especially significant is what happened just one day earlier. For the first time in decades, representatives of Israel and Lebanon held direct talks. The discussions were described by diplomats as historic, rare, and fragile, an attempt to recalibrate a long broken channel of communication between two states still technically at war. Observers had hoped the talks might slow the pace of escalation or at least reduce the risk of rapid retaliation. But the footage from Majadal seems to undercut that optimistic narrative. Action on the ground has its own rhythm, one not always synchronized with diplomatic calendars. While the smoke continues to rise, layers of it drift across rooftops, blurring the horizon line. The view lingers, capturing the swirling haze that signals the aftermath of something irreversible. It is in this quiet, filled only by the movement of smoke, that the viewer can sense the weight of the moment. A ceasefire that exists on paper, but not in the air. Negotiations that coexist with bombardment, and a population caught between statements of progress and the reality of destruction. Moments later, movement appears at the edge of the frame. The shrill sound of sirens grows louder, the kind that signals urgency, but also familiarity. Ambulances rush toward the scene, weaving through the narrow access roads. Their arrival is swift, practiced, almost ritualistic. In southern Lebanon, emergency crews have learned to respond quickly because the window between life and death after an airstrike can be painfully short. The ambulances pull up beside the cloud of smoke still pouring from the destroyed structure. Their lights flash against the grey air, illuminating the dust with pulses of red and white. Rescuers step out quickly but cautiously, aware that some buildings in such attacks risk collapsing without warning. There is debris on the ground, fine dust coating the landscape like a thin layer of ash. They move toward the site but hover at its edges at first, waiting for the smoke to thin enough to reveal the state of the structure. Somewhere inside the wreckage may be wounded survivors, though the footage offers no confirmation. The rescuers' posture reflects both urgency and restraint, a balance shaped by experience in a region where new strikes sometimes follow initial ones. The arrival of these emergency vehicles underscores a reality often overshadowed by geopolitical analysis. Beyond the military calculations, beyond the rhetoric exchanged by political leaders, a strike like this immediately becomes a civilian event. It affects the daily life of families, local shopkeepers, farmers, children walking home from school. The smoke drifting over Majadal is not just the byproduct of a tactical operation. It is a disruption of the physical and psychological environment of an entire community. Israel maintains that its operations in Lebanon are part of a strategy designed to deny Hezbollah the ability to operate freely near the border. Its officials argue that certain positions in southern Lebanon are used for surveillance, weapons storage, or logistical support. Lebanese authorities counter that Israel's claims are selective, politically motivated, and used to justify incursions intended to pressure Hezbollah while simultaneously weakening Lebanese state authority. The footage we are watching does not offer verification for either argument. It simply shows what happens when air power is applied to a village. Amid the smoke, the ambulances remain in place, engines running, ready to transport casualties if any are found. The camera captures the scene from different angles, once focused on the rising smoke, then on the emergency response. These shifts provide a broader sense of the geography, a mix of residential and rural space, a place where buildings and orchards lie interwoven. It is a reminder that conflict in Lebanon is not confined to front lines or isolated bases. It often touches ordinary communities, threading violence through the routines of everyday life. The footage does not include interviews or on-the-ground testimony, but one can infer the atmosphere. Residents who heard the blast would be gathering at a distance, assessing the danger of approaching, trying to determine whether more strikes might follow. For many in the region, warnings from the Israeli military provide little psychological security, because even with notice, the sight of a missile slamming into a structure is a profound shock. People here understand that warnings do not shield them, they simply reduce the odds of casualties under specific conditions. The context behind this attack speaks to the broader struggle occurring along the Israel-Lebanon border. Despite the ceasefire reached last year, Israel has maintained positions in southern Lebanon that it considers strategic. These positions and Hezbollah's presence in the region create a landscape where militarization and civilian life overlap. International observers have repeatedly warned that this dynamic risks generating sparks that could ignite a wider conflict. The footage from Majadal does not show confrontation between fighters. It shows a strike delivered from the air and the immediate aftermath: smoke, destruction, emergency vehicles. But it is precisely these singular flashes of violence that accumulate into broader crises. Diplomatically, the timing is delicate. The recently initiated talks between Israel and Lebanon had raised cautious hopes of reducing tensions along the border. The discussions were aimed at addressing long-standing issues, from territorial disputes to military activity in contested areas. But the strike in Majadal is a reminder that political negotiations do not always restrain military calculations. For analysts watching the region, the juxtaposition of dialogue one day and targeted strikes the next raises questions about how both sides interpret the meaning of negotiations, leverage, and deterrence. Israeli officials often emphasize that warnings issued before strikes demonstrate an effort to minimize harm to civilians. Lebanese critics argue that the warnings are insufficient, highly disruptive, and do not change the central fact that Israel is conducting military operations inside Lebanese territory. The footage offers an unvarnished view of what these warnings mean in practice: a building reduced to rubble, smoke pouring into the sky, ambulances pulling up to sift through what remains. The scene of destruction is stark, but it is also part of a larger pattern. Over the past year, ceasefire or not, Israeli strikes in southern Lebanon have persisted. Hezbollah, for its part, has maintained positions and carried out its own operations, often framed as defensive responses. The cycle continues in bursts, moments of escalation, punctuated by periods of tense quiet. The footage from Majadal captures one of these bursts, a fragment of a broader conflict that rarely pauses long enough to give space for true recovery. The camera continues to follow the smoke as it slowly begins to thin. In the shifting haze, the skeletal outline of the building emerges. Walls appear broken, portions of the facade blown outward, windows shattered. Inside, the destruction is likely extensive, but the footage keeps its distance, perhaps due to safety concerns. The viewer is left to imagine what the rooms inside now look like, whether any objects remain intact, whether the floors have collapsed, whether fire still burns in pockets buried beneath the debris. The ambulances hold their position, their presence anchoring the scene with a sense of human response amid destruction. Though the footage does not show rescue workers entering the building, their stance suggests preparation, medical teams ready to move as soon as conditions allow. Their presence signals that the human impact of this strike is still unfolding. Whether the building was empty or occupied, whether the wounded are many or none, this moment is part of a community's ongoing experience of insecurity. Beyond the frame, political leaders in both Israel and Lebanon will likely issue statements interpreting the strike through their respective lenses. Israel will frame it as a preventive action, part of a broader security doctrine aimed at containing threats before they develop. Lebanon will describe it as a violation of the ceasefire and an attack on its sovereignty. International reactions may call for restraint, urge de-escalation, and highlight the need to reinforce dialogue after the recent talks. But the villagers of Majadal live with consequences that extend beyond statements, building damage, psychological trauma, and a renewed fear that conflict may resume with force. The footage, brief though it is, captures the essential contradiction facing the region. Even as diplomatic channels begin to reopen, even as ceasefires are declared and political agreements negotiated, military operations continue to shape the reality on the ground. The airstrike in Majadal is not an isolated incident. It is part of a continuum that has defined the Israel-Lebanon relationship for decades. Each strike becomes both a tactical moment and a political signal. Each plume of smoke carries within it the memory of past conflicts and the possibility of future ones. As the video moves through its final shots, the smoke hanging over the village begins to dissipate. The sky gradually reasserts itself, pale and quiet again, though not untouched. The building stands damaged, blackened by fire and dust, a testament to the force that struck it. The ambulances remain on site, engines still humming. The village, though shaken, is still there, its daily life interrupted but not erased. This moment in Majadal will join the archive of many similar moments along the border: airstrikes, retaliations, negotiations, ceasefires, violations, and fragile returns to calm. But each new incident carries a weight of its own, shaping the region's sense of stability or instability for days, weeks, or months to come. For the residents who live here, these events are not abstract geopolitical calculations. They are lived experiences etched into the landscape, into the memory of each household, and into the rhythm of life in southern Lebanon. The footage closes with the image of smoke lingering above the damaged structure, swirling slowly as it climbs higher. The sirens soften in the background. Dust settles over the street. And in the stillness that returns, there is the unspoken knowledge that this strike, like so many before it, is both an ending and a beginning. The end of one moment of destruction and the beginning of whatever consequences will follow, from political statements to local grief, from diplomatic friction to military recalibration. In Majadal, life will resume as it always does, with resilience shaped by necessity. But the shadow of this strike will remain, joining the layers of history that define this borderland. The ceasefire continues, on paper at least, but the evidence captured in this footage reveals a deeper truth. The conflict is far from dormant, and the threads of tension still run deep across southern Lebanon.
في أحد الأحياء الجنوبية للبلد في هذه الأثناء. حبيبة كيفك؟ شو وحدة حال